I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Welcome to the Fidelis Leadership Podcast, a place of learning for those who aspire to leadership excellence. Here's our host, Mike Etor.
For over 30 years, Indy Bollman has been a noteworthy and respected leader in the corporate organizational development and human resources space. You may know her for her work at Trailer Bridge Incorporated, where she served as a chief people officer and where she played a key role in creating the award-winning culture, turnaround, and growth the company is well known for. Now the owner of Indy Bollman Coaching and Consulting, LLC, she provides executive and leadership coaching, training programs, facilitation, and event speaking. She is also an author of numerous articles and is currently working on her first book titled Leadership Truth Bombs, What Your Team Wants You to Know But Isn't Telling You. And that book will be released in spring of 2025. We're going to talk about that a bit today. Throughout her career, Indy has also served as an executive and leadership positions in the technology and engineering spaces, where she assisted companies in startup or rapid growth mode by establishing teams, creating and launching training and development programs, and creating solutions to support their growth and development. I'm very excited that Indy has agreed to come here and share some of her vast experience and insights. Well, Indy, welcome to the Fidelis Leadership Podcast. This has been a long time coming.
Thank you. Yeah, Mike, thank you. And I'm just so grateful to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. And, it's Veterans Day, so happy Veterans Day. It's an important day for me. I know it is for you. And I think hopefully it's an important day for everybody out there.
Well, I would hope so, yes. So I love it, and thank you for that. So anyway, the intro was okay, very, very brief. You got a rich background. Give us a couple of more minutes. What do people need to know additionally about Indy Bollman?
Gosh, well, I'm really not that complicated, but one thing I do love very, very much is watching people and helping them grow and develop. But just to backtrack, I born and raised in Florida, love it, love Jacksonville, which is where I live, and traveled the world, but I love coming home. So I do think that's important. I love all different cultures and places, but boy, when it's time to come home, I'm ready. So in my whole career, the 30 years that you mentioned, I've worked mostly at startups and startovers and ramp ups and a lot of places. I never walked into a company. I was talking with someone the other day. I never walked into a company that had an HR or development team ready and going. It seems like I always walked in when there wasn't one or there was some mayhem breaking out. And for some reason, I'm drawn to it and I enjoy it. I like having a role in helping a company turn around or helping their culture, and certainly love building a team and being there for them while they grow. I worked my way from very entry level to executive roles, which is, gosh, that's probably the best. Forget all the titles and letters after my name. I mean, really, that's the beautiful experience that I am grateful for, because it led me to writing the book, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that I got to see various levels of not only leadership and being a part of it, but being a part of different teams and really understanding what teams want and need from their leadership. From that, I learned to really pay attention, and that I really developed a passion for a teacher. I think I'm probably a teacher at heart, but I chose the corporate world to do it. And I just I get a lot of pride and joy out of helping someone grow and take those steps in the career they want. So, that's really me. I just love helping people grow and hoping to do that more now through my business.
Yeah, I love it. Well, listen, just so we can further orient the audience here, what clientele, what niches does your companies seem to gravitate and serve? And then what do you literally do for your clients?
Right. Well, I mean, right now I am doing a little coaching, quite a bit of public speaking, which I enjoy speaking at corporate events, but I'm doing some HR fractional work again for companies that are looking to expand or build a team or to roll out new programs, mostly companies that are in rapid growth mode, and they're finding that maybe we didn't grow that HR and organizational development department to support this growth of the company. And I think companies everywhere really are finding that out, that that's a key department and role. So I'm stepping in and doing a lot of that, and of course there's facilitation and training, and I love that too.
Thank you for that. Well, as you know, the podcast is all about leadership. And I think we have a diverse audience of seasoned executives all the way down to maybe people who I know we have some people that listen and watch the episodes that aren't even in leadership roles yet. So they haven't even started their journey formally. So I always ask people up front, guests, if you were limited to just a minute or two, what is your executive summary of Indy Bollman's philosophy of leadership?
Pay attention. Pay attention to your team. Be very curious about them. Connect with them. Certainly have to, I think, as a leader, shift your sense of pride to what you've accomplished, to pride in what your team is accomplishing. They'll feel that. They want that. They'll know that. And I happen to think that's what grows your company, is growing your team. It's in that order. You grow your team, you'll grow your company. And the other thing that I would mention is, be fun. Who wants to go to work and just have a terrible time all day and wait to get off and go home? To enjoy it. People want to have a good time at work, whatever that looks like for them. So if you're paying attention and you're curious, you'll figure that out.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, the timeless question I ask everybody as well, leaders, born or made?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. Okay, so off the top of my head, I'm going to say both. I think that everyone's born with certain tendencies and probably profiles. And if you believe in assessment tests and things like that, you get a sense of some of that. But I think the other biggest part is it's developed. It's a decision that I want to be a great leader for these people. I want to be a great leader and accomplish things through my team. And so by making that decision, I set that intention and I want to grow. So I think some people just are naturally more prone to leadership, and some people are not. But can you develop some of that? Absolutely. You just have to make the decision I'm going to grow and be the best leader I can be. And be open to that change.
Yeah, well said. Well, let's start talking about your book. I'm going to repeat the title here: Leadership Truth Bombs: What Your Team Wants You to Know but isn't telling you. I love that title. It says it all.
Thank you.
I think there's a lot of leaders out there like, no, my team's telling me everything. Probably not. And I was guilty of that as well. So first question, is it still being published in April of 2025?
Yes, it's supposed to be published right now, April 30th of 2025. We are in the editing phase. Lots of fun, lots of work, but I have found I loved writing. So yeah, spring of 2025. Yeah.
Cool. Well, the obvious question first, why did you write the book and what audience is it aimed at?
Well, I've always wanted to write a book. And I think with the hours of work that I worked, especially in the executive roles later in my corporate career, just didn't allow for that. And so when I left and formed my own business, I thought this is something that's really heavy on my heart to do. And I knew what I wanted to write about. And I think there's a gap. In fact, I know there's a gap between, well, you were just referring to it, between what leaders think they know about their team and what team members are really thinking and what they really want. And so I think to bridge that gap, I wanted to put this message out there about the leadership truth bombs, because I really paid attention through my whole career as a team member and as a leader, what was really going on in their minds, because they won't always tell leadership. Sometimes it's out of fear, legitimate or not. They won't always share, but I think it's so important for leaders to create that culture that they will tell you. And so there's a little bit about that in the book, kind of guiding, leaders and up and coming leaders to take their team down that path of let's build a little more trust and collaboration. So important.
Thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely important. So I'm sure the book is crammed full of good stuff, as they say. Obviously, I haven't seen it. So can you give us a peek at it? Like, what are the most, most important concepts, and issues or questions that the book addresses,
Right. Well, the Leadership Truth Bombs, there's 14 truth bombs in there that are little quick sayings that my experience has taught me. These are things that employees, members of teams are either saying or thinking. And just to give you a little bit of an insight into what those are, one of them is, it really is all personal. We like to say all the time, it's not personal, it's just business, right? But to an employee, it's all personal because they're depending on that for their livelihood, to take care of their families and their homes. So that's one of the first things. And I talk a lot about that in there. And the data that actually supports that, the more engaged and happier an employee is in a workplace, those are the companies that are winning. And there's really solid continuously trending data that supports that. Another one of my favorite ones is, you can't cherry pick who to be kind to. You just either are or you aren't. And I think that's so important. It's not a strategy to be kind to your employees. It's just really who you are. And so that's, saying no favoritism, don't allow those things in your company that speak to that or act in that way. And so kindness, genuine kindness, employees feel and they respond to. And the beautiful thing about that is that's where that feedback and that trust of sharing, really transparent, heartfelt truths can be shared because it opens the door for all of that. It makes it much more easier to do that. And then there's one, I'll share a third one, which is, don't lose your stuff. In other words, don't flip out because, first of all, you look very funny in front of your employees doing that, and they never forget that look. And second of all, you're modeling that behavior. You're modeling that behavior to them. You're teaching them that when the going gets tough, you flip out. And the other really awful thing about doing that is when you do, any focus or any energy going towards the work or a problem at hand goes away. Now they're paying attention only to watching you flip out. So it's just not productive. So it's a little insight.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. In fact, I just wrote a note. I don't know if you saw me writing his.
I did.
Get Indy's book.
Okay. I will send you one. You don't have to worry about that.
Oh, thank you. So I'm intrigued by these truth bombs. Obviously, you wrote about it. You've lived it. And can you share with us a few examples of what are some of the most common truth bombs that people want to tell their bosses, but often do not?
Well, certainly the three that I was just telling you. And I think, to just elaborate on that, I think when a boss or leader, rather, is kind of saying, I want you to handle these things. I'm delegating to you. Here you go handle this thing. And then they swoop in at the last minute and change everything. That sends a lot of cross signals. And employees are not typically very forthright, out of fear sometimes to say, either give it to me or don't give it to me. But, and if you don't trust me, let's build that together so you get to that place of comfort. That can also be avoided by a lot of clarity up front about where things need to land. And so I tell a story in there about my daughter, that I used to swoop in and take care of everything for her. And when she got in her 20s, she said, when you do that, it makes me feel like you don't think I'm capable. And that's probably one of the best leadership lessons I ever got, was that if you don't let them handle something, they think you don't believe in them. Better to let them, sometimes you have to select the things, better to let them fail a little bit and then help them, then learn how to clean it up and move forward. Not a lot of employees are going to say that. Yeah.
No, I understand it. You touched on it in your answer. And you're implying and stating that, a leader has to build a culture in which people are willing to speak truth to power.
Mm-hmm.
And as anyone that's ever been in any kind of leadership role knows, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
What's Indy's response? Some baseline advice? How, leaders out there saying, well, I certainly want my team to throw truth bombs at me.
Yeah.
How do you develop that culture to where they really will do it?
Well, I think you just have to do it. And when you take the feedback, you say 2 words, and they are thank you. Don't have the reaction to what they're telling you. And what I have found is if I'm having a bad reaction to feedback I'm getting, usually that's an indication that there's some truth in it. And so I've learned to just say thank you and let it breathe for just a little while and then come back to it and really ask myself, is anything in what I just heard true? Can I fix that? Now, that's not 100% easy to do, as you were mentioning, but I think you just have to do it. You have to invite that feedback, and it's not constructive criticism. I hate that saying, because nobody believes it's going to be good news after you say, I've got some constructive criticism for you. I mean, you never hear after that you're getting a raise, right? You always hear that something's wrong. Or let me give you some constructive criticism. You're great. You don't hear that. So people immediately do this. But if you show that I'm going to hear everything you say and I'm going to listen to it, and even if you're reacting to it, just pause, say thank you. I appreciate that. Show gratitude for truth, and then just establish that culture of, we listen to each other, and it's with the intention to help each other grow. It doesn't happen overnight if you don't have it now, but it can and it will happen. I've seen it. And it really is something. It really moves an organization and a team forward very quickly.
Thank you for that. I want to get your thoughts on something. Going off script, so to speak here.
That's okay.
I have learned over time to obviously I want this speak truth to power culture and all of that. And I wasn't always an executive, and neither were you. I started in the Marine Corps as a young enlisted man, so I've been at the bottom of the food chain,
Yeah,
and
me
wondering,
too.
why don't they just ask us? We know what's going on down here, you know. And so here's what I started saying, and I'll be honest with you, Indy. Almost every time I've ever said this to a team that I was taking over, they told me later on, no one has ever said that to us and explained it this way. And what I tell them is, listen, I know you've heard things before, other leaders, open door policy and all that.
Yeah.
And what I tell them is, listen, I will always listen to you. I'm promising you right here, I will seek your feedback and I will listen to you. However, it doesn't mean I will always adopt and execute your suggestions.
Right.
Now, your suggestions could be great. Often they're better than anything I've thought about, but there are extenuating circumstances. It's not the right time for the company.
Right.
We don't have the resources or manpower to pull it off. We've already got a full slate of initiatives. This is going to have to wait. But I will always listen to you. So don't hesitate, and don't get upset if you say, oh, Mike's full of crap. I told him this, he listened, nothing happened to it. And so I try to give a feedback loop, like, that's a great suggestion that Susie had last meeting. I love it. I wrote it down. We're going to address it during the next budget cycle. So you get the gist of what I'm saying. And I'm sure you said something similar like that. Your thoughts on this for the leaders out there in the audience?
Yeah. Well, it's a great subject, Mike, and thank you. I'll backtrack just 1 second. We were talking about if you've got people that are scared or not comfortable bringing stuff up, you are losing on some just really yummy innovation and ideas. If they're scared to speak up about anything, they're focused on the fear. versus focused on, the freedom of, oh, let me think of a new way of doing this, or a new product, or a new whatever. And so you want those people focused on that. Now, that comes with the caveat that you said is not everything can be implemented. However, what's different about what you said, and which, I have done throughout my career as well in leadership, is clarity up front. We can't put every idea in, but I do want to hear them all. And your idea may spark another idea that does happen down the line. So the value is in the sharing, and they'll feel the value of really listening to them. They're on the front line doing their job every day. They know, and they have ideas. Like you said, it may not be the right time, but I think the clarity and the honesty around, we'll do our best and we want some new ideas, but we implement those things that make sense for us right now. But we have to listen, and want to listen to all of the ideas and thoughts you have about new things we can do. I think that's really the gold. And by the way, in that method, you do get a lot of good ideas about people that are doing their job every day, and they usually have some legitimate thoughts about how to make it better.
Yeah, thank you for that. I want to throw another one at you. I want to get your technique for soliciting feedback by offering you my technique. And my technique is I always ask the audience has heard this before, Indy. The audience has heard this before. I got some lighting issues going on here. I don't know what's going on.
That's okay. It's like you're in a disco, Mike. I was,
Yeah, exactly. So people who have read my book and people who have listened to this podcast know that I have adopted a Marine Corps technique, and it wasn't mine. I heard it. I call it the 3 big questions. And under the theory, a well-proven theory, that most of the frontline teammates know what is going on, often better than anyone else in the chain of command. So I have learned to ask these questions, and I teach these questions. The questions are, what should we start doing? What should we stop doing? Continue. And what should we do differently?
Yeah.
And if you have created a culture where they'll speak truth to power, shut up and let them talk.
Yeah.
And so I know you're agreeing with me on the slim chance that you don't ask the same questions that I just asked. Joking, obviously. How do you draw that feedback from your organization? How do you what do you use? How do you solicit it from them?
Yeah. Well, if you have an organization that's struggling with some morale issues, or you don't have any procedures around that, one of the ways to start that is through, anonymous surveys, just to get people thinking in that thought process. Once you've established that you are taking that feedback in, and sometimes you have to coach your teams on how to give feedback, that this isn't the time to, remark back on something Sally did 4.5 years ago. This is with the intention of helping each other and helping the company move forward. And so, like you, the old start, stop, continue, that format I think is very valuable because it's very directive for the mindset. It does put someone to start them thinking of, what are we doing great? What are we not doing so great? And then another question I like to ask is, what can I do? What can I do to help you move forward and do even better? What other tools you need? What other leadership do you need from me? What do you need more time? What is that? And so one thing we were already talking about is you ask the question, then you hush and you listen for the answer. And after that happens for a while, that gets into a groove, and they understand that that's the process, that you're genuinely asking for it. You genuinely are listening to it. And then they become freer and freer. There's no repercussion for them telling the truth. Now, not the intention to hurt, but just telling the truth. And you can feel that, right? You can feel that when it's just the intention to help. And I think all employees feel that. We feel that. And so I think helping to frame the questioning with the start, stop, continue, or something similar. It's short, it's sweet. They don't have to write a bunch. It could be a 5 or 10 minute conversation once in a while. But then really, really listening to the answer. I even like to make notes about it and bring it up at the next conversation. Say, last time we talked about this, how have you seen that change? Has anything, been implemented that has addressed this? Again, that shows I'm closing the loop. I heard you and I made note of it. It meant something to me, and it should.
Yeah. Andy, hang on 1 second. I'm going to carve this out. I realize what's going on. I forgot to turn my overhead lights on. So I'm going to go. I'll be back in like 5 seconds.
Okay, I'll sing a song.
So I'm in sunny Florida as well,
Okay.
and I came in. So I'm having home renovations done. So I have a large home gym. So I'm in my gym, and the sun was out, and then all of a sudden the clouds came, and I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, oh
and
my.
so I just turned the overheads on, and so that should take care of it. So.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll carve this out, and I'm going to start again. I'm going to ask you a follow-on question. Well, thank you for that, Indy. I do have a follow-on question, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on it. I have found by asking the 3 big questions, and of course you just elaborated your own way of doing this, I always seem to have that one person that keeps bringing up their pet initiative or their pet, and I had a person in my team one time, and she was several layers down from me, the executive level. And that's okay. I mean, some of the best ideas came from that level, but she was a huge advocate of the green movement. Right. And so she wanted to know, Mike, when is the company going to get with it and install CO2 friendly emissions, stuff, and special light switches and our lights and recycling paper. I mean, she was just like a pit bull on it, and I just had to tell her, well, thank you for that. I think we're doing what we can. But she just wasn't, every single time she was fixated on it. And I could tell people were getting tired of it. And so I actually, talked to her boss, and I said, we don't want to shoot the messenger, but I'd like you, if you're okay with it, I'd like you to send her up. I want to talk to her personally. Sure. And he goes, no, I think it would be good. So I talked to her and said, look, Susie, I know you're passionate about this, and I support it. I have to tell you, our building is brand new, and the chances of me convincing the powers that be to gut this building and put in entirely new wiring and skylights and things is pretty much zero. I said, first of all, it's not our building. We rent it. And I said, I hear you, blah, 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 and this and that. And I said, I don't want to shut off ideas. We'll implement some where we can, but for the most part, a lot of what you're espousing, we don't have the freedom to do. And quite frankly, it's not really our priority at this point. I know we want to save the earth and all of that. And she said, okay, I got it. She didn't sulk or anything like that. So I know you've had those, prickly pears, so to speak, that just keep, and you see that person's hand raised and you're like, I know what he's going to say. Yep. I know it. Yep. So how do you respond to that in public and or private?
Yeah. Well, I think what you did is you gave attention to it. So you paid attention and you gave more attention to it, which passion of the issue, which is a great issue, and her passion to that is notable. So that aside, it sounds like she wanted the opportunity to share that passion in some way. And she had ideas for the company. So, I mean, I think the honesty of, hey, it's great. I honor it. We can't do that right now. It's not even our building. But it could have been that I might have also asked, what else could we do? Is there something beyond re-outfitting the entire building. What else could we do? And gosh, while we're at it, do you have any other ideas about our products or services or systems? I mean, trying to use that creative process that this person had in other ways. It does feel like there was more about the speaking up that was important. Maybe she hadn't felt heard before or valued in some way. Right. And so that was her hill, she was going to be on. So I think what you did was perfect. You gave her attention, which is, first of all, what she needed. And second of all, she felt valued because she was definitely being heard. But third, I would have loved to hear, we can't do this, but what are your other ideas that we might be able to implement? Maybe something smaller. I don't know.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And I do think that I did what you said. And I will tell you that this was not a bad person. This was a really valued employee. Awesome. She was good at her job. And I have been retired from that company for, going on 12 years now. Wow. And she's still there.
Right on.
She is still there. And I got to believe if I or anybody else had just shut her down, cut her off at the knees, dismissed her, ridiculed her, she would have been out of there before I'd retired. She wouldn't have stayed. Your thoughts?
Well, it's what her passion. Yeah, it's what her passion was. And she was speaking up for that. And my guess is that she brought passion into what she believed in, and believing in her job. She probably brings passion into what she does, which makes her great. She believes in something and she speaks to it. There's nothing wrong with that. But I would love to, like I said, would love to have had that passion on what else can you see that needs to be improved too, because it sounds like this is someone who's very smart, a little outspoken, which is not a problem, not afraid to speak up, which is kind of what we're talking about here, right? Is learning what your team really wants. But just, getting her ideas on other things as well. What did she feel passionately about? Other areas that she could also feel her contribution is valued on and her ideas are wanted on. I mean, I think that's a great person to have on your team that isn't afraid to speak up, for the right reasons, that this is genuinely something I believe in. It's genuinely something I'm passionate about and would love to see us act on, not just hey, I just, I'm complaining. It doesn't sound like a complainer at all. It just sounds like I feel strongly about this.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I want to shift in another direction here. You are very, very much in touch with the modern workforce. I want to see if you're noticing or have noticed any emerging trends in the workforce, any new ways of thinking and all that. What are you seeing out there that leaders need to be aware of?
I do spend quite a bit of time circulating and reading and staying in touch. And of course, I just a year ago left the corporate world. So thank you. I do think I do stay in touch pretty well with what's going on. I think, the first big one is AI. We've been talking about it for years, and I think there was a lot of fear around it. But I think people are finding ways to use AI more for routine tasks that will allow them to focus more on innovation and growth, which AI really can't really do for you. But the more routine things it might be able to. So I think finding ways to utilize it, if it's suitable for your business, finding ways to utilize it in that way is very important. I think another one is that we're seeing, the whole work from home thing that started with COVID. I mean, it's really now, instead of WFH, it's WFC, which is work from a coffee shop. That's not going away. And I have really noticed that over this past year in writing my book. I'll go to different coffee shops in little areas to write, just to, get out of the home or out of my office. And I'm noticing a growing industry of little shops providing meeting spaces and really catering to people that are working remotely. It's not going away. So I think employers everywhere have got to make friends with that. And a lot of them do. Not every position can be done that way, but those that can, especially creatives, I think, like me, they're finding more of a creative flow when they're somewhere else. And by the way, I see gobs of people working remotely, and they're working, they're not playing. So just employers out there, focus on the results. If they're getting the results to you, they may just need that change of atmosphere to be more creative. I think we're hearing more and more and more about a change to a 4-day work week. I don't know where that's going to land, but companies are starting to adopt that. I'll be curious to see over the next year or two what happens with that. For a while, it was unlimited PTO. I think that's gone away. I think it's going to go away for good. In my opinion, I don't think it ever really caught on. And I think one of the things that continues to be a trend is that really good talent, the kind we all want in our organizations, they want you to invest in them. They want to be trained. They want to be developed. They want you to mentor them or find them an opportunity to be mentored by someone. And that will grow your business, which gives them that career path they want so bad. So that's never going to go away. I think every age range, every employee, there's not an employee out there that comes on board and says, I don't want to learn anything. They all do. They're just more vocal about it today. So I would listen to that. And the last thing I'll mention is, in fact, I was reading an article just this morning in Forbes and in a couple of other places that more and more companies are hiring older adults to either forego retirement for some time or after retirement to come into the workplace to capture that knowledge. And in fact, the fastest growing segment of workers is over 75. And I find that very interesting as the fastest growing being hired segment. So I think there's some, with today's less seasoned employees wanting mentoring and a growing workplace of 65, 70, 75 and up. I mean, that seems like a perfect marriage right there, if ever there was one, to at least provide that mentoring.
Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't know the statistic about 75 and older. I knew people were retiring and unretiring. They just
all the time.
And I will say this: I am 68 years old, and I refer to myself as middle-aged. I'm 68 years old. I'm going to be 70 in less than 2 years, and I don't feel it. And so I'm old enough to remember when I was 20, 25, 30. People that were 60 years old, more often than not only looked very old, but they thought they were old. They had been raised in an environment, you're 60, you get the gold watch, you retire, and you're probably going to die with a 6 in front of your number. You know what I mean? You're just, they didn't expect much. And so today's older people, I'm broadly generalizing here, are healthier and more capable. They want to work more. They don't consider, hey, I better retire now. I'm getting ready to die. People are living longer.
100%. Yeah.
And so I agree with you. I'm just throwing this out for the leaders. And if you have any follow-on thoughts, I would advise leaders not to succumb to ageism, because I don't care if it's a frontline job in the mailroom, the shipping dock, or whatever. You get some gray hair in there, so to speak, and you've now imported some life wisdom that if they're the right person, you probably should be paying them twice what you're paying them, because the influence and impact that they're having on impressionable people
who want it, who want that. Yeah. And they want that impactful.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. And so that they do want that. That's going to be my next ad lib question is, I can remember I had a boss one time, very seasoned executive. We were talking about the new generation and all that. He goes, "Oh, Mike," I said, "Bill, what you came in the market when 1967 around there?" He goes, "Oh, Mike," he said, "let me tell you something. I went in the professional world, and the people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, they looked at us like we were alien beings, the men." Because we did not have short haircuts, and God forbid, Mike, we did not wear hats. I can
Oh,
still remember
gosh.
my dad going to church. A gentleman would not go to church without a shirt and tie on and that little fedora.
The hat.
Every man wore a. So he said, Mike, just based on those things, and even worse, he said, some of us wore loafers, and to wear shoes that weren't tied was defying a long established business principle.
Yeah.
And they wrote us off, Mike, and of course we did well. And so the message he was sending is, I have learned not to write anybody off. Well, we've got some people on our IT team with spiked hair and pins in their face and all of that. And as long as you telling me they're doing great, more power to them, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm pontificating here, but what do you say to the people that say, Andy, I hear you, but this Gen Z,
Yeah.
I mean, they are. Now, they are different, and they have been raised differently, and some of their passions are different. But that's what they said about me. You know, they called my called Pepsi generation, you know, hippies. They don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So what do you think? What do you say to the naysayers about the younger generation?
You know, I honestly, to speak plainly, I think it's kind of a load of crap. I think that Gen Z is just saying what every other generation has wanted. They've wanted to be developed. They've wanted an opportunity to give back to the community, and they want to feel a real purpose in what they're doing every day at work. Who doesn't want that? I think this is just the generation that said, we're demanding it, you know, or we'll find somewhere that'll give it to us. And they are doing just that. And, you know, and I'll give you another statistic just real quick, going back to the ageism. The workforce of 65 and older has doubled in the last 30 years. So it's not just 75 and older, it's 65 and older. And we're seeing that trend. So bringing people on who want to teach what they know to people who want to be mentored. Again, I just don't see the downside to that, because I think you have people who want to work and know how to do a good job, and you have people that want to learn from them. And by the way, there isn't a person out there who doesn't want to feel a sense of purpose every day in what they do. And I talk about this a lot in my book. Everybody wants to feel a sense of purpose. And there's just, I don't know what generation, you know, from boomers, which I am, to millennials and generation X, Y, Z, wherever we're going to next. No human wants to wake up every day and feel like their life doesn't have some kind of purpose around it, some kind of goal around it. It's just how we are made. And so I honor Gen Z for speaking up and saying, no, you know, I believe in this. This is what I want. I want opportunities to give back. I want to grow. I want a place that's going to teach me. And they're standing by that. I think they're just saying out loud, as I mentioned, what every other generation has wanted.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I follow a statement, maybe a question I want to have you weigh in on is
Sure.
Some of the things that I'm aware of with Gen Z is, and these are the very youngest people in the workforce now. They're getting into the professional world. Is some of the previous generations, mine included. I'm a boomer as well.
Okay.
Money was important to us. You know, compensation was important to us. Gen Z, again, it's generalization. They actually value time off.
That's right.
In many cases, like, hey, keep the raise, give me a work from home day or a half day off on Friday or whatever. Yeah. Another thing is, as I understand it, doing a lot of reading on it, they do not intend to stay in your company 10, 15, 30 years.
No.
I was raised by Depression era parents, and they said, you get a job and you stay there. Because we grew up in an era we didn't know where our food was coming from. So you stay there, you know, don't do it, you know. And then, of course, my generation was the first one for 401ks, and you could leave, and companies don't offer pensions anymore. And so they look at a career. My own children of that age, they look at their work life as being longer will probably never stop work, and we just love it. And I talked to my daughter, they're talking about 4 or 5 different careers that are not even related to each other.
Right.
And so here's what I want. So leaders have to be aware of these differences. They're very real.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that they're wrong or the generation's all screwed up. And then what do you do, Indy, to retain people? Because you are going to train them in some aspects, and you don't really want them to leave in 2 years or 1 year, but you're going to lose them at some point. How do you get that person to stay motivated, stay engaged, and in the 3, 5, or 6 years or whatever that they're there, their foot is on the pedal the whole time, and when it's time to move on, you shake their hand, you put your arm around them, and God bless you, come back anytime. Yeah. We wish you luck. How do leaders handle this?
Well, you brought up a point I was thinking about earlier. The thing in my generation was, don't let less than a year job time be on your resume at all. Yeah. That's out the window. So if you're looking only for resumes of people that have been places 10, 15 years at a time, you're going to have a very hard time finding them. They're looking for flexibility and challenge and growth. And so, how do you keep them? Well, the first thing I would say is, I don't necessarily believe in only training people just to keep them, because my philosophy might be a little different than some others. If I've got somebody for a few years, I'm going to pour into them everything I can and help move them along the best I can, and then they are more ready than ever to move up in my company. If I'm growing my company and I'm growing my people and investing in them, they are more likely to stay there, maybe move to a different department, maybe move to another job, get that flexibility and challenge that they're looking for. But the bottom line is, you don't 100% know. They do want to be paid well, but you're right. They value that time off. They really want that work-life balance we've all talked about for years and years and years. And they're saying, hey, I want to take an RV and go across the country a couple of times this summer. Let me go. And I think that's kind of the direction we're headed in. We, for many years, have looked at, countries overseas that have all this time off and thought, well, that's crazy. But it's really not. We're seeing more and more demand for that time off. And then, they come back, of course, refreshed and ready to work. So how do you balance that? I think the biggest thing is you ask them. They know what they want. They know what they need. Like I said, I've just written a book about, we're not asking them, and they're not really telling us. And so they're probably not looking for another $1 an hour. They're looking to be developed. And they wouldn't mind that extra pay, by the way, but they really want people and companies to invest in them. And they want to move up. So applying all that and giving them that path to move up and to move into higher positions, if that's what they want, that's how you grow people, to grow your business. And I think that's the best chance of keeping them. But barring all of that, I'm going to develop the heck out of anybody that's on my team, just because it's the right thing to do. And that's what I want to be known for. Yeah.
I agree with everything you said. And I'm going to throw, there was a Marine Corps general in the early 60s, and he was talking to the officer corps and the senior sergeants of the Marine Corps, and said, look, let's face facts. The Marine Corps is 185,000 people, and we bring in 50,000 new recruits a year. The Marine Corps almost turns over at the lowest levels every 3 years. So the vast majority of Marines are in one term and they're out. We have a duty to make them great Marines. And if we do it right, we produce an even better citizen for America. And if we really do it right, we produce someone with fond memories of the Marine Corps that will evangelize and recruit and recommend their relatives. Like Marine Corps, I was in 5 years, loved it, go do it. And so take that example, and I've always told people, don't look at someone leaving as if he's a communist infiltrator. You left a company. I always ask, how much did you ever leave a company? Did you ever take a better deal? I said, so embrace it, treat them right. Best case scenario, they have fond memories of you. They think you're the best leader they ever had. And they call you one day and say, hey, how you doing? Hey, look, I got a person I think that would be a great fit for your team. And I've seen that happen. So my statement to business leaders is don't burn bridges with people on the way out. You never know how they can benefit your team in the future. Mm-hmm. And so I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. Well, if you've got somebody, and I've through my years had a lot of different employees that were studying to be something different than what they were doing maybe on my team. And that really didn't stop me from continuing to pour into them, because while I had them, the productivity and the innovation and growth that came out of that far outweighed any cost or time investment to training them. And so I always made it okay to say, well, I don't run a medical facility, but someone's studying to be a nurse. Okay, while I have you, I'm going to train you and teach you everything I can that prepares you for this company and your role, and will help you when you go be a nurse. I mean, if you're investing in training people, there's really not a downside to it. Understanding where they want to go. They may be in a role working for you, and they, in my role, it was HR, OD, and marketing. Those are my backgrounds. They may have wanted to be an accountant. Well, while they're on my team, if I know that, if I've been curious and I've asked them, what do you want to be? Where do you want your career to go? Maybe I can start incorporating things that prepares them for the opening on the accounting team. That's how I keep great talent, I think, within a company. Maybe not on my team, but I'm sure if I can keep them even in the company, I mean, it's still a win-win. So I just think paying attention, asking the questions, and just training them, making them the best they can be in the role they're in now, and preparing them for what's next, if you can in any way do that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, our time is coming to a close, but I want to ask you, I have two standard questions, and it's a two-sided coin, so to speak. You've been around a long time, and you have worked for, observed, trained, developed, coached a lot of leaders in your time. So let's talk about the top 10% of the very best you've ever observed, worked with, and all of that.
Yeah.
Are there any habits and traits that most of the best seem to have in common?
Gotcha. Well, I mentioned, paying attention to their teams and being curious about what they need. But I think in addition to that, clarity and consistency, particularly in how you treat people and also what the vision for the future is. If you're clear on that and you communicate that, people begin to see, okay, here's my role and how I can plug in to make that happen. And that's when the feedback starts, if you ask them. So not only having that clarity and vision, but communicating that, I think, is huge. Also that consistent messaging. And I mentioned treatment of people. So if you're only hiring your best friends to come work for you, that's almost never going to work. I mean, there are cases where it can, but that can make things quite uncomfortable. And so favoritism, just be very careful that people immediately, kind of take a step back from that. They're not sure how to handle that. And so be careful of favoritism and certainly of cliques. If you're allowing cliques to grow, the best leaders that I've been around were the ones that just didn't allow it. And all those things can be overcome. So a lot of awareness around that. And again, back to that paying attention and curious about what your team needs. Because as a leader, you're just one person. Your team is many people. There's no way you can do all of their jobs and yours. And you want to focus on what you bring to the table uniquely and allow them to do the job that you've brought them in to do. So accomplishing those things, but through them and helping them to celebrate those accomplishments.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Well, let's turn over to the darker side of the coin. I know that you've also, in your years, you've observed the least effective, let's call them charitably, the least effective leaders. Any habits and traits that most of the very worst seem to also have in common?
Well, I have had some great leaders I've worked for and with, and so I'm very grateful to all of that. I've also seen some things and observed and aware of some things that don't work very well. And, I think there's the standard things, being dishonest or being unkind. You don't want that reputation. It's almost impossible to get rid of, right? It really, really is. So I think aside from that, we all know that it burns trust, that burns a bridge that is very, very tough to get back, but you also lose their respect. And so along with that comes, allowing those cliques and favoritism that I mentioned. Employees really, really hate that because they feel like they are not going to get a fair shot. Can you overcome that? 100%. But again, paying attention and not getting caught up in that. And then the last thing, that I'll mention is getting in the middle. If you have direct reports that are also leaders, if you're an executive role and you have managers that have their own team, try not to get in the middle of those too often. If you interject too strongly, certainly want to be in contact and reachable and approachable by everyone. But if you cut in the middle of your direct report and their own team too much, everyone's confused. The manager is embarrassed. They're humiliated, and the team doesn't really know who to work for. They don't know who they're going to upset if you change course a little bit. And so I'm kind of saying respect to the degree you can, that chain of command a little bit, because it helps to keep respect. And if there's a problem, handle the problem with the leader that works for you, but don't just cut them off at the knees because it does a couple of things. Like I said, it humiliates the leader, but it also teaches that team of theirs a very, very bad leadership example. And remembering that everything you do, everything you say, they're watching and they're learning what you want them to grow into be. So if you're doing something that is not your best, and we can't always be our best, but if you're doing something, keep in mind, this is what I'm showing them they need to learn to be. So I would just be always aware that they're watching and they look up to you. They're wanting to model you. Make sure that you're showing them the best that they can be and that they'll succeed at.
Oh, solid insights. Thank you for that. I know people are going to be very appreciative of these things. Well, so. we are out of time, but I have to ask you that fantasy question I ask everybody at the end. Okay. If you were able to bring back one leader from the past, Indy, and spend a day with that person, who would you bring back and why?
Wow. When you ask me that, I have all these different leaders that jump to mind. Winston Churchill is somebody I follow, Nelson Mandela. There's just so many of them. Gandhi. I run the gamut of all these people, but I have to go to the one that probably a lot of people say, and I'm going to say Jesus, and I'll tell you why. Faith aside, I can't imagine another leader that faced more challenge and adversity than he did at a very young age. Brand new ideas, no team, no following, no backing. A lot of people looking down on him, didn't believe in him, didn't want to. I think he had every challenge possible, and yet, because of what he was passionate about and believed in, which I think is very important for everyone in the workforce, particularly leaders, he just kept going. And so I would love to just have that day. There's a lot of questions I have for him for a lot of things. But in terms of leadership, I just would like to know, how he really overcame those challenges, because he had to really start from ground zero to build everything, whether you believe in it or not, but to build everything that was accomplished in his short lifetime, which was pretty astounding, historically speaking. And, how did he do that? What would he advise a leader today? Just be solid in that commitment and that passion to help others.
Yeah, it's a great choice.
I think it's easy to be rattled. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you are right. Many others have chosen him as well. I will say, is a bit of a smart aleck. If you can arrange that meeting, would you please invite me? I'd love to be there.
I have a lot of
as well.
questions.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And then there's Churchill, who is not anything like that, except I just feel like he had the toughest time in his career to lead. And gosh, look at what he brought to that table, just that passion and commitment. I really, really appreciate that in a leader. And there are many of them, but those are the ones that pop to my head.
Well, thank you for that. Winston Churchill is one of my role models as well. I've studied him. Fascinating individual, quick wit, and I love him. The best, I always, one of the best quips I've ever heard about him saying was, some woman, some aristocratic, the wife of an aristocrat, did not like Winston Churchill, and they were talking in a social setting, and she said, "Sir, if you were my husband, I would poison your tea." And without hesitation, he said, "Madam, if you were my wife, I would drink it." And just the whole room fell silent, like,
I'm sure.
Like right there. So I love the guy. Talk about rising to the occasion when his country needed him.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, listen, fascinating episode, Indy. Thank you so much. I think people are going to want to reach out to you. Tell us how they can do that. And as important, where are they going to be able to find your book in April?
Gosh, absolutely. Well, this has been a whole lot of fun, Mike. Thank you. And I do invite everyone, please reach out for me, if even just to connect. I love building my network, and I'm grateful for all the fabulous people I'm connected with. You can find me on my website, which is indybollman.com. You can certainly find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect to everybody there. And my email is indy@indybollman.com. A lot of indies in there, but that's how you can reach me there. The book will be out in April, and the end of April, you'll certainly be able to get it on Amazon. And if you'd rather go to your favorite bookstore, you'll be able to order it through there. And all that information will be coming. But I look forward to connecting. I'm not shy to connect to people. I just say, bring it on, let's connect. And I'd love to learn from anybody I can.
Yeah, I love it. Well, again, it's been fascinating. I can't thank you enough, Indy. It was worth the wait. We've had to postpone this a few times. So it was definitely worth the wait. It's going to be well received. And I humbly ask that you consider coming back again, doing another one someday.
I would, in a heartbeat, Mike. Thank you. And thanks, everybody.
All right. Well, thank you. And be safe and be well, Indy. Thank you.
You too.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, and recommend to your friends. Please visit our website at fidelisleadership.com and sign up for our leadership newsletter. Until next time, remember the words of the ancient Greek philosopher Pericles.
What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but is woven in the lives of others.